Hello, electronic music lovers. Welcome to episode 6 of the podcast Electric Communion Conversations in Clubland. The podcast that aims to shine a light on some of the talented and hardworking producers, DJs and promoters out there doing amazing things who you may not yet have heard of, but definitely should. In this episode, I'm in conversation with the Norwegian producer Meera, who, since breaking onto the dance scene early this year, has been making a name for herself with releases on the labels VOD and Crosstown Rebels. Her tracks have been cooking up a storm on dance floors around the world, being played out by the likes of Kai Music, Black Coffee, Jimmy Jules, and the Crosstown Rebels boss himself, Damian Lazarus. This conversation was recorded on the 23rd and 26th of October 2023. And I want to make my apologies from the outset for my terrible pronunciations of the Norwegian language. It's such a beautiful and poetic language, and unfortunately, my dulcet northern tones just can't do it any justice whatsoever. Electric Communion Conversations in Clubland. Okay, hi Meera. Great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. You're very welcome. Now I have to start by asking you how you're feeling, because I know you've just got back from the Amsterdam Dance Festival, better known as ADE, which I guess for those listeners who may not be familiar with, it's a citywide electronic music festival that takes place over, I think, 5 days. Thousands of artists playing across hundreds of venues. So how was it for you? Was it your first time, and what did you get up to? Sounds like you've got a bit of a croaky voice. Have you been talking a lot?
Yeah, it was kind of a long week. My voice is completely wrecked. I think this was my third time maybe, and I just did like a bunch of meetings and a lot of parties.
Right, okay. And who did you get to see in terms of artists, and what were the highlights for you? I
saw Horse Girl and I saw Alex Wan. I went to the school. I also did this mix mag thing with Elif. And then probably like a bunch of other stuff too. But Horse Girl and Desiree, I saw her too. That was my highlight. She was really good.
Excellent. And I guess, you know, it was a great networking opportunity for you. I know that you said...
Totally.
I know that you said pre-podcast when we were just talking that you had several meetings. Anything that you can tell us about exciting future projects that kind of bore fruit from your meetings and from the festival?
It was mostly just like doing in-person meetings with people I've been working with, but I did schedule one release for early next year, I think, and then just like a lot of like tentative gigs and stuff going forward.
Now, you're from Norway, and you live in, is it Stavanger? Is that how you say it?
Yes, Stavanger.
Which is on the southwest tip of the country. Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, it is.
Now, just to give a bit of geographical context to the listeners, I did a little bit of research on Stavanger. So it's the third biggest city in Norway, apparently. Mm-hmm. Also, it's known as the oil capital of Norway due to the kind of offshore discovery of oil in the late 60s, which apparently transformed its economy into the busy city of today. It also reminded me a little bit of my hometown of Brighton, because it's got lots of kind of colourful shops and houses, hasn't it? Cafes, etc. In downtown Stavanger, which is very similar to Brighton Lanes, which I know you're familiar with because you told me earlier that you've been to Brighton yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of like a very condensed version of it.
Right. And what's the vibe there in terms of dance music? Is there a good club scene?
Not really. It's a lot of like pop clubs and very little like good dance music.
For those who are not familiar with your music, how would you describe it beyond being electronic music? Do you feel that it firmly fits in with a particular genre?
I'm not really sure. I feel like it's generally like an Afro-techno kind of thing, but I draw my influences from a lot of different places.
And I know that your dad was a DJ and producer. In fact, I think he still is a DJ. I actually saw that he did a mix the other day inspired by a recent visit to Pikes in Ibiza. He was a kind of a big deal in Norway, and I'm guessing he was a big influence on you and how you got into electronic music.
I mean, it was definitely my introduction to it, but I feel like my interest in wanting to do it kind of came from seeing stuff online, like Burial and Daft Punk, especially.
And now, we just talked about your dad, and again, you mentioned him in a pre-podcast conversation with me, and I did a little bit of research on your dad and kind of went down a little rabbit hole finding out more about him. And yeah, he's a really, really interesting guy. Seems to be very much involved in kind of the electronic music scene in Norway. And again, I found some interesting facts about him. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this is just a summary because I found out so much about him. He goes by the name of DJ Prince, and around 1987 he took part in Norway's DMC mixing championships where he reached the final. He ran a store in Stavanger, a record store called Groove Records. He helped organise rave parties in the area. In 2009 he took part in the Pepsi DJ battle to find Norway's best club DJ, and he ended up winning that. And he also had a top 3 hit single on the Billboard dance chart, which was it was the first to reach, I think, 1 million streams on YouTube, and it was a mashup of Snoop Dogg and Eddie Cochran. Now, I guess when these things were happening, you were quite young, because I think, are you 25 now?
Mm.
Do you remember much about your dad and his kind of celebrity status in Norway when you were younger?
No, I don't really. I remember the Snoop Dogg thing, but I don't remember much about it.
And something that else was really interesting about him is that he wrote several articles about harmonic mixing, which formed the basis of the software Mixing Key, which he helped set up. Which, again, for listeners who may be not familiar with Mixing Key, it's basically a piece of software that analyses your tracks, your digital tracks, and it determines the musical key of those files. And then I guess the theory is it allows the DJ to mix it a more harmonious way. Do you follow those principles yourself? Do you use the software Mixing Key?
I used to when I was younger, but I don't really do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I still try to mix very harmonically.
And what does your dad think about the music you're producing now? Is he a fan?
Yeah, I think he likes it.
Right.
He's into it.
Now, I read a comment from your dad, and at the time I didn't know it was your dad. He goes by the Instagram handle of DJ Prince Norway, and he said that you asked him to install Ableton on your computer, and then he offered to show you how it works, but you declined. And you said you wanted to work it out yourself. Do you recall that moment?
I really don't.
No. But you obviously taught yourself how to use Ableton. I mean, tell me a little bit about the journey you went on to get to the point you are now, where you're producing electronic music, you're releasing electronic music. You know, what was the journey like? Did you find Ableton easy to get a grip on?
I think Ableton is very intuitive and easy to use. And early on, most of my time was spent doing remakes of tracks and trying to remake songs or sounds. And I just watched a bunch of YouTube tutorials. And then I did that for a few years, and at that point I was kind of comfortable enough to start releasing stuff.
Now, this year is the year where you've released, correct me if I'm wrong, your first electronic tracks on some major labels. I read somewhere that before that you were making some film soundtracks.
I went to a media school when I was younger, and for the second year we had a film project, and I scored that for my year and the year after me.
Were they for any films that were released?
I mean, they were released locally at the movies, but it wasn't a big thing. It was student films.
And your first release this year, your first major release, I guess, was on the excellent VOD label. It was a 2-track EP called Music for Humans, which I was a big fan of the moment I heard it. Tell us how those tracks came about, and when did you first begin working on them?
I think I started early last year maybe, and then I sent them to someone involved with the label because I wanted them to play the tracks, and they were we would be interested in signing us. At first I was kind of unsure, but then I decided to just go with it, and then everything just kind of happened from there.
And when you set out to make those tracks, Greveling, is that how you say it? Greveling?
Yeah, Greveling.
Greveling and the title track, Music for Humans. Did you have some kind of idea about how you wanted the tracks to sound, or was it just a very kind of organic process and that's how they ended up?
I do very little planning when I make music. I just sit down and whatever happens, happens. So those tracks just kind of came into existence as I was making them.
And the label VOD, did you envisage them as the right label for the release as you made the tracks, or how did, the relationship with them and the release come about?
I didn't really plan to release it initially, but when they asked me to release on that label, I was already a fan of it. I decided to just go for it because it felt like a good fit for me.
The EP has been played out by the likes of some heavy hitters on the scenes, Kind of Music, Damian Lazarus, Jimmy Jules, Black Coffee, Avagant Talabot, all these big names within the scene. Can you remember the first big name you heard about who was playing one of your tracks, and where were you and how it felt?
I think the first person or video I saw was maybe Ryu. That was the first clip I was in, and then after that was Jimmy Jules.
And did you just find out via Instagram?
I don't remember how I found those two in particular. I think someone sent it to me. And Jimmy Jules I saw on some story.
It must be a great feeling when you see, these DJs and producers who I'm sure, you're big fans of, appreciating your music and playing it out to these big crowds.
No, it was totally surreal. I had to pinch myself, and it was so cool to see.
Well, let's play one of those tracks now. This is Greveling. Electric Communion. Conversations in Clubland. As I said, Greveling is released on a 2-track EP called Music for Humans on the VOD label and was released early this year. Check it out. Now, Meera, tell us a little bit about your studio setup. You mentioned that you use Ableton. Are you producing from home, and do you have a preferred way of producing? I read, because you had a little article in DJ Mag recently, and you talked about having a preference for analog sounds and slightly off-kilter percussion.
Yeah, my setup is kind of awful. I have this JBL portable Bluetooth speaker that I use for audio. And then I have a regular Logitech keyboard and my monitor, and that's all I use. That's my setup.
Educate me here and excuse my ignorance, but speaking from someone who doesn't really know much about music production, you know, you see lots of producers with racks of keyboards and fancy hardware, whilst your budget setup and the fantastic music you're producing seems to suggest that all this expense is not necessary. So, you know, can you enlighten me? What's the catch, and what are the limitations to the equipment you currently have?
I don't really feel like I have too many limitations because I have access to like every VST I could possibly want, and there are so many emulations of analog equipment. So I personally don't really feel limited, but I know a lot of people like to work with physical equipment. Like I know Andre or like and me and Rampa, they like working with the equipment they have in the studio, and that works for their workflow. But I personally like just working in the box.
Is there any piece of equipment or software, you know, that you really want, you're planning to buy, and if so, how would you see it enhancing your setup or your sound?
I really want to get more bass equipment, like pedals and stuff, because I have a bass already, but it's kind of expensive, and it's kind of like, it seems like it's very easy to get addicted to just buying a bunch of pedals and analog equipment, so I'm kind of scared of falling into that trap. And I would also want to get like a Moog or something, because I like the kind of natural jankiness you get with a physical synth.
But do you feel that with the equipment that you have at the moment and with the software, are there certain things that you can't do that, you know, you would like to do, and therefore you need to invest in order to, you know, achieve that next level, or the sounds that you would like to do?
The only thing really holding me back is my audio interface. It only has 2 inputs, and I would have liked to get one with more inputs so that I could plug in like the Tyler Revelo and more stuff to it. Currently, if I want to use the Tyler, I have to plug out my mic and only go through that, and then I have to plug in my bass like after using that and my microphone separately. So it's kind of like annoying to work with, but
just makes the whole process a little easier, I guess, a bit more fluid. Yeah. And you started adding your own vocals, didn't you? Was it Teflon, which was your second release on Crosstown Rebels? That featured some of your own vocals, didn't it?
Yeah, that's Telephone.
Telephone, okay.
It's like telephone, but it's in Norwegian.
Sure. And I guess you wrote those lyrics as well?
I wouldn't really call it writing lyrics. Usually I just have the track play and then I say whatever I'm thinking of.
Now, you seem to be a sucker for making long tracks.
Yes.
Out the 4 you've released so far, only one of them, Telephone, clocks in around the 7-minute mark, the rest being above 9 minutes. Is that kind of a conscious decision from the outset, or do you just find it difficult to let go of certain elements within the tracks you make?
I really like giving all the elements space to breathe and like having it be this cohesive experience. And I can't really do that in 5 minutes. So they end up being 9. It is very intentional, and I feel like it kind of goes against this very current thing of making really short things, and like mixing for 2 minutes and making these super short tracks. And I kind of want to go against that. So it's like a very conscious decision on my part.
Yeah. And we talked about Telephone then. That was released on another 2-track EP on Damian Lazarus's Crosstown Rebels label. Damian Lazarus, obviously someone who has been in the game for a very long time, who's very well respected. And he's really been championing your sound recently, which must feel like a great honour. He really hyped you up in one of his Instagram posts, didn't he? And he was quoted as saying, "There's nothing about this new artist I don't believe in," which, yeah, is high praise. How did that kind of relationship, that friendship come about?
I saw a video of him playing my track, I think early this year, and I sent him a message just thanking him for playing my music, and then we started talking, and he was interested in doing an EP with me.
And did you find that as a result of what Damian Lazarus said about you, did you kind of gain a whole new legion of followers?
Yeah, definitely. Before he made a post about me, I had like maybe 200 followers. And then I kind of quickly jumped to 500, and then I know it's 700.
And then you recently played alongside him and Black Coffee for the Night High in Ibiza. I think the story went you were asked last minute because another artist dropped out. Is that right?
Mm.
Was that your biggest DJ gig to date, and how did that go? Were you nervous?
Yes, I was incredibly nervous. It was, I think, the first like proper big club gig that I've ever done. And it was super scary going up to it. But like after like 10 minutes of playing, I kind of got more into it. But it was a very daunting experience.
And what was the vibe like?
It was really good when I got there because Bartolomeo, I don't know if you know him, he was doing the warm up and he like did an incredible job. Everyone was super ready to just go crazy. So the vibe was super good like throughout the entire set. And I even got some messages after, which was really nice.
And did you spend a lot of time thinking about your set prior to the night, or was it much more kind of spontaneous when it came to you playing out?
I mean, I only had like a week of preparing because it was like very short minute. So I spent some time preparing, but like most of my sets are very like, I'm just going to play whatever feels good.
Yeah. And you can actually listen to that set now because it's on your SoundCloud page. I've listened to it myself and really enjoyed it, and we'll find out, how to follow your SoundCloud and other social media accounts later on. Now, I guess, talking about social media, I guess, for many producers and DJs these days, the whole self-promotion thing goes hand in hand, with getting your name out there. How do you feel about self-promotion? Do you feel the need to? Because I just get the feeling, maybe from looking at your Instagram profile, I know that you only started that this year, that it's not something that you feel overly the need to do. Is it something that you find a chore, or am I making the wrong assumption?
No, I really don't like using social media and posting. I think it's stupid and annoying, but it's an important part of making music.
Sure.
So I keep up with it sometimes because I feel like I have to. But it's not like a very enjoyable thing. The one thing I do like about it is connecting with other people over messages.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, you've just also had an article in DJ Mag, and the other day you posted that you had something about yourself written in, was it a Norwegian magazine or newspaper, which I guess demonstrates that your reputation as an artist is on the rise and is gaining traction.
Totally.
Now, you just mentioned that sometimes you feel a pressure to have to play the promotional game. And I wonder what your thoughts are about the recent post from the artist Radio Slave, which has now gone viral. And I should say he didn't actually write the post. It's attributed to someone called Gretchen Peters. But the post essentially talks about, due to the fact that it's a lot easier now to make music as equipment becomes cheaper and more accessible, like we were talking about with your setup earlier, the music business has become more demanding of artists, and thus the market has become more saturated, and how this in turn has put huge pressures on artists like yourself to constantly be churning out music and content. And there's this feeling that the quality of the product is losing out to quantity. The quality is being watered down in a sense. Now, I actually watched a film last night, a short film, which I sent to you, and I know you've watched, which further supports this theory to some extent. The London producer Timante, they say something very similar. Now you're in the game, so to speak. Do you feel that pressure? Do you put pressure on yourself to make and release regular music? And what's more, do you feel the pressure from external forces such as labels?
I definitely feel that there's a lot of pressure for me to kind of keep up with my social media and release music very evenly. I especially feel the pressure from labels because they've been approaching me and like wanting me to make more music and having a more consistent release schedule. When I first went into it, I wanted to do like maybe 2 releases a year at most, because I didn't really see any point in making like weekly or monthly releases or whatever. So I've kind of reached like an agreement kind of with me and the labels where I'll do slightly more releases than I initially would have liked. But I don't feel like if I were to make too much music, it would kind of just kill the quality.
As a female artist and DJ, what's your view of the dance music scene in 2023? Do you think it's a good place in terms of equality and diversity, or do you think it still has a long way to go? And do you find, as a female artist, it's kind of much more harder to get noticed as opposed to a male artist?
I don't feel like I have too much experience in the field to kind of have a good developed opinion upon it. But I do feel like we still have a ways to go. Like this past weekend, I was speaking to two like pretty established and like bigger artists, and even they face a lot of issues when doing gigs, like people thinking that they don't know how to set their equipment up and just assuming that they don't really know anything about how all of this works. So we still have a ways to go. And even with like bigger shows, you see on the billings, there's like 10 guys and like maybe one girl.
Yeah, that is really frustrating. I mean, it sounds like the industry still has some way to go. Whilst on one hand, there's clearly a better representation of female DJs on the lineups these days, certainly compared to when I first started clubbing, which was a long time ago. But it seems, that there's still, a disparity between the ratio of male DJs to female DJs. I guess that could be down to the fact that there are less female DJs out there, which in turn raises its own set of questions. But from what your friends are saying, though, it's clear that promoters and others working within the scene, still need to take greater strides in dispelling certain stereotypes like the examples you just gave.
Totally.
Electric Communion, conversations in In terms of DJ gigs, do you let them come to you at the moment, or are you kind of getting out there and trying to seek them yourself?
All of my bookings have been coming to me. I don't really seek that out.
And at the moment, do you just kind of manage them yourself, or?
Yeah, I do all of it myself currently.
And you've got a big gig coming up, haven't you? Is it next week? A Halloween gig in Germany, Dusseldorf Airport, which looks very exciting. You're on the bill with some big names, Recondite, Economist, Jonathan Casper. Will you be dressing up for Halloween?
Yes, I will. I'm going to be a witch.
Right, okay. And it's at Dusseldorf Airport. Is it a day thing? Because the London female DJ, Red Freya, she played there recently as well, and I think Jonathan Casper was on the lineup. Is it a night that's to do with Jonathan Casper, or is that just a coincidence?
I think he's involved with booking or something in some capacity, because he's been there for a long time.
Okay. And talking about Germany, you recently went to Berlin, I saw. Was that your first time, and were you in search of musical inspiration, and what did you get up to? Did you go clubbing? Did you see any DJs there?
I really only went to go to the Keine Music show, but then I ended up doing Berghain as well, because I was in Berlin and you have to. And then I met up with some friends and someone from an agency, and we just like walked around and had fun.
Was that your first time in Berlin, or?
Yeah, it was my first time.
It's a fantastic place. Really, I love it. Yeah, I've been there
I really love it.
many times. How is your music received in Norway?
I don't think most people really give a shit about that kind of music.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So even in the capital, there's not really kind of a scene for the kind of music that you play?
There's a scene, but it's pretty small. It's currently growing. I think Sebastian Lager played there like a few months ago, and Roy Rosenfeld is playing on Halloween, I think. And then Jaeger, this kind of bigger club, they have some cool bookings every now and then, but the scene is pretty small.
Have you been asked to play out there yourself?
Yes, I'm playing there early December and late January.
And you've got your own Spotify playlist, which I've checked out, and is a rich tapestry of electronic music. What's your main source for discovering new music?
I think my main source is probably Spotify. Like just finding an artist I like and kind of going through like suggested artists and like radio tracks and playlists. And then I also get a lot of stuff from Discogs, YouTube, other DJ sets, from vinyl. Like pretty much anywhere I can get music, I'll find music.
And what artists and DJs are inspiring you at the moment? Who are you really into?
Like just in terms of production or just like listening?
Both in terms of production and just going out clubbing and enjoying DJ sets.
I mean, and Me has always been like a big inspiration to me. I think his productions are very sophisticated and nice to listen to. And most of my influences are more of like a vibe thing. Like I'll go to Berghain or the school and I kind of get a feel for it, and the vibe just kind of gets infused into my music. And beyond that, I listen to a lot of like indie stuff, like Man I Trust and Mac DeMarco and like Tame Impala and that kind of stuff. And I think that makes me think about music, like electronic music, in a different way.
Sure. And when you are not thinking of and making electronic music, what do you do in your spare time? I read somewhere, maybe it was a comment that you made, that you had a kind of penchant for video games.
Yes.
You mentioned Zelda, which my oldest son, he's a 13-year-old, he would be very impressed about, because he loves Zelda. I think he has completed the recent one. Is it the Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah.
Have you completed that yourself?
Yes, I have. I play a lot of video games. Like most of my time now spent producing is video games.
Can you give us an insight into the games you're currently playing, and what's your favourite game of all time?
Currently I'm playing Final Fantasy Online, Lies of P, and Sims. Sims is something I always play. And I think my favourite game of all time might be like Bloodborne and Animal Crossing.
Oh yeah, I am familiar with Animal Crossing. I had a friend who used to play it a lot, and I think you get rated, don't you, as how nice you are to the people who you're looking after. Is that right? You have a rating, a 5-star
Yeah,
rating?
you get kind of a rating on your island.
Yeah, she used to tell me how she's very proud of having a 5-star rating or something like that. That's about as much as I know about Animal Crossing. Now, you clearly like spending time indoors producing music and playing games, but how about the outdoors? Because obviously Norway is famed for its beautiful fjords and mountains and all the recreation activities associated with outdoors. And I read there's a word in the Norwegian language, and I'm sure I'm going to say this wrong. It's frilufliv, which basically is used to describe the value that spending time outdoors has on one's mental and spiritual well-being. And it apparently runs much deeper than merely going out doing stuff like hiking and skiing, etc. It's about disconnecting from stress and being at one with nature. And I read a stat that said that 9 out of 10 Norwegians buy into this philosophy. Are you one of those 9? Do you spend a lot of time outdoors?
I spend pretty much no time outdoors.
Okay, so you're the 1 out of 10.
Yes. I mean, I do appreciate it. I think it's really great and healing to be outside. But I just also really like being inside.
Now, I must ask you, because when I was doing my research about your home city, I came across this tourist attraction about 20 miles from Stavanger called Pulpit Rock. I presume you're familiar with Pulpit Rock?
Oh, yeah.
Have you been?
I've been there. I've only been there once, and I'm never going to go up again. That one time was so special and magical because it was when Circle was doing their live stream there.
Right. Oh, brilliant. Amazing.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you about, and listeners, you must Google this place, because basically it's like a huge overhanging rock with a flat tabletop surface, which is high above, overlooking a fjord. I think it's called Lys Fjord. And what amazed me is that you've got all these people gathering there on a good day, and some of them are, precariously dangling their legs off the edge, and yet there are no safety measures such as barriers as far as I can see. And in the UK, that there'd be barriers, warning signs, all sorts of safety measures, and extraordinarily, according to my research, there's never been a record of any accidental deaths. Sadly, someone did once commit suicide there. But would you say that says a lot about Norwegian people, and are they quite a relaxed bunch?
Yeah, I would say Norwegians are pretty relaxed. Those stats aren't completely true, though. There have been a bit more accidents and stuff that have happened, but they don't really report on that.
Right, sure, okay. I was just so amazed that, you know, to see all these people just sitting there with their legs dangling off. It's just so risky. Wow, yeah, but it seems like an incredible place, and must have been all the more magical to actually go and see a circle event. Who was performing at the time?
I think iMusic and someone else, so I don't remember.
Fantastic. Now, a number of my guests on the show so far have talked about the need to hold down a regular day job as well as focusing on DJing and producing. Mainly, you know, as at the moment, though, work as an electronic artist / DJ wasn't a financially viable source of income for them. Do you do any work besides making music and DJing?
No, not really. I only do DJing, like once, maybe twice a week.
I guess that frees up the time for you to put all your efforts into making music then.
Yeah, definitely. And video games.
Yeah, of course, and video games. So what's next for Meera? Can you tell us about any releases that you've got on the horizon?
I have a remix coming off Motive Boy, like early December. I have a collab with Tripolism coming sometime, I don't know when. And then I have an EP coming early February on Crosstown Rebels.
You mentioned Motive White. I'm a big fan of him. Yeah, that remix is Clean the Turbines. Am I right? Yep.
Yeah, it's going to come out on XYZ, I think, which is When We Dip's label.
Yep. And you mentioned Tripolism, who are, you know, really kind of riding a kind of a wave at the moment. Obviously, they had the collab with Nandu, Dope Dance, and I believe that they've got another collab with Nandu coming out, which I've seen the likes of Dixon, I think, actually at ADE play. So that will be
Soul Train, it's called.
Okay. Have you made that track yet with Tripolism?
Yeah, we just got the master, I think, a month ago, maybe.
Okay.
So it's been ready for a while.
And how did the collaboration come about in the first place? Who contacted who?
I sent them a message on IG in like April, so like way before Dope Dance was even out. I think I saw a video of Dixon playing it. And then I noticed that they were Scandinavian, so I thought it was like probably a good idea for me to reach out with them and connect with other Scandinavian artists.
Are they from Denmark?
Yeah, they're from Denmark. And then it turned out they'd heard my music as well, because Graveling had come out at that point. And we just kind of connected over our music, and then they sent me over this really rough short demo and asked if I wanted to do something with it. And then I worked on that for a bit, and I sent them like pretty much a finished version of the track. They made some small changes, and that's how the track came together.
So would you say it was quite a fluid and agreeable process?
Yeah, we were like pretty much on the same page in like every part of the process.
Are you quite easygoing, do you think, in regards to other person's ideas, or can you be quite critical? And I'm especially interested because my last guest, the Italian producer Michael MP, he regaled the story of how he dismissed 8 out of 10 stems that his collaborator Hamoon sent him, which I just thought was quite funny, certainly the way he told it.
Yeah, when I do a collab, I can be very overpowering. Like the Tripolism collab, they sent me like 15 stems, and I ended up using maybe 2.
Okay, so it's
and
a similar story. Yeah.
Yeah, in the final track, the only stuff like left from that original demo is, I think, a perk loop and a 8-bar pad loop, which just plays once. And
how did they react to that? Were they totally cool with it? They liked kind of what you did? I guess they did, because you produce a track together now and it's been mastered.
Yeah, they seem to really like the direction I took it in.
Now, can you give us an insight into the sound you've both created? Is it a new direction for you? Does it have that Meera sound? I don't really know what the Meera sound is, to be honest. I just make music and it kind of ends up sounding a way. There isn't like a conscious effort on my part. Sure. Now, I must ask, did you have to negotiate the track length with the Tripolism guys? I just made it, like, I don't remember,
8-9 minutes and sent it to them, and then they didn't change it. So I guess they were okay with it.
And can you tell us anything more about its release? Is it signed to a label yet?
Yeah, it's going to be on Ultra, which is the label Tripolism is mainly working with at the moment.
And looking ahead to the future, if you could collaborate with anyone else right now, who would it be and why?
I think it would maybe be Andre and me, because I love his music so much, and he's such a great guy, and it will be so incredible to work with him.
And that's and me from the Berlin trio Kind of Music.
Mm.
And you mentioned the track, how do you say it again, Suckle Curve?
Oh yeah, Cykelkurv. That's the EP coming on Crosstown Rebels in February.
Okay, so another one out on Damian Lazarus' Crosstown Rebels. Okay, so we've got another exclusive right here on Electric Communion. Going to play a snippet of Meera's upcoming track due out on Crosstown Rebels in early 2024 called Suckle Curve. So I read you saying that you had a huge backlog of unfinished tracks. Why is that? Is it because you're always thinking about the next track, or do you just like having, many projects on the go at once?
When I work on music, it's very I get the idea down fast, and if it doesn't grow, I just kind of leave it, and then I go on to the next thing. And what I usually end up doing is combining older ideas into a new track. So it all ends up being a track in some way.
So it does end up getting used, eventually. Because my previous guest, Reg, who you may be familiar with as an artist, he talked a lot about having a graveyard of music where all his unfinished projects go to rest. Do you have a big graveyard where some of these tracks or elements of tracks you'll never get used again, or do you think every now and again go back and try and resurrect some of those tracks?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a graveyard, then I'm kind of like a necromancer, I'll constantly bring it back.
Right.
It's pretty big, but most of them are like so far away from being finished.
Yeah.
If a track reaches a finished stage, it most likely will be released or played in some capacity.
How much time do you spend producing music? Do you have a kind of daily routine, or is it just kind of sporadic?
I can go like a few weeks without making music, and then I can make music every day for like a few months. It's not a very set schedule, it's just whenever I feel like it.
Sure. Well, I think that leaves me with just one more question, really, and that's where can listeners find out more about you and what you're up to?
I mean, there's my Instagram, which is my only social media, which is Meera _etc, or like etc. It's a kind of like a play on OFC, because I thought OFC was stupid. And then I have my SoundCloud as well, which is the same. And then also Spotify, of course, for the playlists. Sure,
and I will include all these links along with the show, so listeners can find them there. Okay, so I've got one last question for you, Meera, and it's a really deep one to finish with. What's your obsession with pictures of cats? I've noticed that you like to sneakily deposit pictures of cats in various guises into your Instagram posts. Are you a big cat lover? Do you have cats?
I don't have a cat because I live with my family and they hate cats. But I just really like them. They're silly and cute. And I have 2 cat tattoos as well.
Well, thank you very much for clearing that up. Meera, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me, especially as it's clear you've got a bit of a sore throat at the moment. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I, for one, will be keeping a very close eye on your career as it continues to flourish, as I'm sure it will do. Good luck with your show next week in Dusseldorf. I'm sure you'll smash it. And yeah, I'll leave listeners with the aforementioned track Telephone, said that right this time, from Meera's last EP on Crosstown Rebels.
I just wanted to say thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
I've been trying to reach you. Why won't you pick up your phone? I've been trying to text you. I want you to write me back. I've been trying to text you. I want you write me back.
Thank you again to Meera for taking the time out of the studio to talk to me. And thanks as always to you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed doing it. Don't forget to check out the links to find out more about Meera, which I've posted alongside this podcast, which includes a fantastic set recorded at High Ibiza. For future updates about this podcast, please follow my Instagram page at electric_communion. And if you haven't yet listened to my previous episodes with producers Fade, Reg, Adrian Rahman, Michael MP and Roberta and Sarah, the promoters of the London night Nebula, be sure to check them out on my SoundCloud page or on all major podcast platforms, which now includes a YouTube channel. All the links are in my Instagram bio. Please like, follow and subscribe. You can even ask Alexa now to play the Electric Communion Conversations in Clubland podcast, and she will dutifully obey. Finally, you can check out my monthly radio show on Decadence UK on the 4th Monday of every month, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. GMT, and it's via the Decadence phone app or website. Until next time, keep on dancing. Electric Communion Conversations in Clubland.